And so today we're super honored to be joined by Raida, who's the co-founder and COO of Bison Labs. Bison Labs is spearheading innovation in the Bitcoin ecosystem with the development of Bison Network, which is a ZK Stark rollup anchored on Bitcoin. And we're going to dive into all of this and more today, get into the background of what this actually means, and hear from Raida's perspective how they're navigating the Bitcoin landscape. And so at that, I'd like to say, hey, Raida, welcome to the stage. Do you have mic access? How's everything going?
Oh, it's going good. It's going good. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure, and yeah, it's I'm really excited to talk to you guys about what you think in the or what you're thinking about. The different L2s, different scaling solutions in Bitcoin, and just this massive opportunity that's ahead of us.
Absolutely. And thank you as well for taking the time out of your day to share with us how you're looking at the landscape, how Bison's looking at it and navigating the landscape, and everything that you guys are doing to stand out and build yourselves a distinct product within it. So super excited also to dive in. I think we should have a great conversation ahead of us today. Ryda, if you don't mind, before we actually dive into the meat of things, we always like to start by getting to know our speakers a bit. Could you give us, before we dive into Bison Labs and Bison Network, could you share with us a little bit about yourself, maybe a little bit about your background and work experience within the crypto industry?
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I come from a kind of a very political background. I was born in Abu Dhabi to Sudanese parents, and kind of being an immigrant there. Migrated to the U.S. When I was 13, kind of in high school, and yeah, I kind of came up, around that time, kind of like early 2000s. Went to electrical engineering technology school at Metro State in Denver, and yeah, wanted to build hardware, compressors, equalizers, microphones, things like that, and built a lot of stuff for recording studios. And then I started programming MIDI with JavaScript. Meanwhile, I read the Bitcoin white paper in 2013 or 2012, and then kind of get a lot more into it in 2013. What interested me, and I think to this day is still my kind of theses about crypto, or investment theses, if you will, but just theses in general. I think it's a socioeconomic revolution, a restructuring of society in its own way. And when I read that interpretation back in 2013, it gave me goosebumps, and I kind of went a lot harder, but was just more so buying it at this Western Union place where I'd cash my checks, and they give you this little burner, give you a little burner address on a little piece of paper, and you go and move it. And yeah, I mined a little bit of Doge back then too in 2013, 2014 time. And then in 2016, I got into development on Ethereum. Then I got into developing on Zcash. I think Zuko is one of the biggest pioneers that's like slept on to this day. And then, yeah, contributed in Arbitrum, contributed in the Starkware community and on Starknet. And then I also did like Ethereum Denver hackathons and hacker houses and stuff like that. I became the tech team lead last year. Then this year I was just a Bitcoin mentor. So I was able to like run Bitcoin Node and OPI and stuff like that on the main stage during ETH Denver. So that was also pretty cool. Um, yeah, that's a little bit about me. I mean, I've got into ordinals early last year in February, and just coming from a kind of a deep, Ethereum background, I think um, one of the main reasons why we always didn't build on Bitcoin was just like this notion that like that you can't build on Bitcoin, and where when there was an opportunity and Ord came around and provided this, kind of extension to Bitcoin Node, and we can do more stuff. I think the excitement was in the air. Even people like Vitalik were tweeting like, last year about, how they're excited now and they're messing around with Bitcoin again. So yeah, Jay and I got together on the sovereign rollup design idea, and we really love ZK Starks, and Jay is a core contributor in Starknet as well. So it came really easy for him to work with Cairo And for me too, I know a bit about Cairo. So we like this ZK Stark design because when it comes to sovereign Bitcoin rollups, we really believe that the output data amount is going to matter in the long run. If we're talking, very scalable, robust rollup, whatever is outputting to inscribe as the proof, back on the L1, then, the lower the data, the more profitable it is because, as you know, inscriptions cost depending on how much data you're trying to inscribe. And with the ZK Stark's output, low computation. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit about the design and why we choose like ZK Starks and Cairo. And yeah, it's a little bit painful, but we can talk more about that.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Thank you for the comprehensive background. I always love, hopping on these calls with the OGs who have been in this space since, the early days, like yourself, and hearing your perspectives, because it's interesting. Things just evolve so fast, and you've seen so many more waves of evolution than I would say the majority of people have. So it always helps to hear the perspective and insights from people who have kind of seen these waves, right? Seen how narratives can build and then be absolutely gone within the next month, and so really interesting to hear your take on ordinals. I definitely want to dive into more of this today. I had this sort of, and I still have this sort of high level understanding of ordinals as inscriptions on Bitcoin, and from my perspective, what really stands out is like BRC20 assets, being able to buy and sell and kind of trade these exciting tokens. But you guys are really using ordinals in a more sophisticated way, in terms of actually creating smart contract compatibility, or if I may. So I definitely want to dive into that. But for anybody in the audience, let's keep things at a high level first before we dive into these intricacies. I want to just maybe start with quickly diving into really what is Bison Labs, and furthermore, what is Bison Network. Maybe you could give us some background on how long you've been building. I know you kind of just shared some insights about that, but what it is, how long you've been building, maybe a high level overview for anybody in the audience who has not yet heard of Bison Labs.
Yeah. So I would just say Bison Labs is a scale and solution company for scaling Bitcoin DeFi. We have Bison Network is our kind of flagship product right now, which is a ZK rollup that's directly on Bitcoin without a soft fork. This rollup is using a ZK Stark, so we're using Cairo to output that. And we've been building for about, I would say, since March of last year, but officially a lot sooner, like closer to, say, September of last year. And we had our first project that went out on mainnet. And it's on mainnet. It was the the Bitcoin Startup Lab token launch, which was really good, right? People got to claim their tokens and things like that with minimal to basically no gas fees. And that was a big event. It happened last year in November, and it's kind of like our mainnet project. Now we do have other execution environments coming. So what we do essentially is we inject this execution environment directly in Bitcoin, so then you can mess with native Bitcoin assets. Whereas like an L2 or like a side chain or something like that, you would need to bridge in and out. With Bison, because we are still on the L1, you don't actually need to bridge in and out. So that solves kind of your bridging problems there. And then there's also a DLC. So we never actually hold any customer funds. We don't have any control over the funds. So yeah, kind of like a roll up. I guess on a high level, right? Like what is a roll up and what is an L2? I think is a good thing to bring back, is because roll ups are actually finalizing the batch transactions are being verified on the L1. So you think like rollups on Ethereum, you think Arbitrum or Manta, they finalize, on the L1, Ethereum L1, whereas like Polygon doesn't finalize on Ethereum. It actually has its own chain, so therefore it's an L2. So it's not a rollup necessarily. It can have rollup functionality within it, but that's a different story. But on the macro scale, what is a rollup? What is an L2? I think that's important here. That we're not like a Bitcoin L2. We're definitely a Bitcoin sovereign rollup. And to be more specific, it's a ZK sovereign Bitcoin rollup as well. But that's kind of like the macro side of things. There's obviously the sequencer, there's a prover, and then the verification that happens on or Bitcoin directly, if you will. And yeah, hopefully that's not too technical.
No, I think that was a really great background actually for everybody, and really helps to clarify really the differences, how you see or how one would explain the differences between an L2 and a roll up. And I wanted to actually pick at this a little bit more. You explained some of the benefits, right? That Bison doesn't require any bridges. This decreases, or rather eliminates centralization risks. And kind of allows you to build directly on the L1 and sell directly on the L1 that is Bitcoin. So definitely a lot of benefits here that are apparent to us all. But obviously with every decision comes pros and cons. So, curious from your perspective, some of the limitations that you've run into, like as we look at this at like a high level discussion, we see that a lot of people are going the L2 route. And this is Bison's approach is definitely a unique one to me. I think the ZK Snark approach is, less, maybe I'm wrong. Correct me if you think I'm wrong, but maybe less adopted than all the L2s that we see that are building. Why is that the case? Is it just the complexity of building and teams don't necessarily have the background and understanding that in Outlook as you see it? Are there a lot of pros and cons that would sway people in either direction? How do you look at this?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of key things to look at. We're inheriting the security directly from Bitcoin because we're finalizing the transactions on the L1, and then on the settlement level, and then we're also taking the DA or the data directly from Bitcoin as well, and then enabling obviously smart contract functionality. Those are kind of like the key, I guess, positives. Now the negatives is in order to do this in this type of way that is completely different, what we're doing is we're using Cairo smart contracts, and those smart contracts are even different than what usual Cairo is. I'll give you a little background about Cairo. It's a smart contract language that is kind of Rust like, or very similar to Rust. However, it's very new. So I think the biggest challenge is obviously there's the network effect of Solidity and just virtual machine language, smart contract languages, even Rust, and there's not that many people that know Cairo, and so it's just hard to find devs that know it, let alone are building or are in good position to build projects there. Then also another challenge is also streamlining or scaling developer acquisition or onboarding developers, which has been very, very challenging because of, again, the nature of the design. It's again, we're using very new tech like Starknet just rolled out like a couple of months ago. They've been building that roll up for about 6 years, and then Ordinals just came out a year ago. And so a lot of people don't understand ZK Starks and Ordinals, and we're combining these two innovative techs in order to, run with a kind of an innovative tech stack in our opinion, and something different that's not a copy pasta, just like everyone else is, ZK EVM SDKs all over the place, right? And that's all cool, but there's also a lot more innovation that can come out of it, and it's painful. Yes, it's painful to write new code and create a new lane, but there's a reason for it. Again, there's the silver lining is when you look at Open Zeppelin, the biggest brains in Solidity, they actually just added a new language on their website. If you haven't guessed already, it's Cairo. So why would the big brains at Open Zeppelin, like out of all these other languages, why would they add Cairo, right? Like, what do they know that some other people don't or other people don't, I think there's something there. If you look at the roadmap for Ethereum as well, you'll see that the update that Vitalik shared not that long ago has a ZK Stark everywhere, right? Like they're trying to put a ZK Stark any and everywhere, and hence why Open Zeppelin is moving forward with expanding knowledge base and capabilities for Cairo, because Cairo is the future of programming. It is the fastest, lightest, and just kind of, in my opinion, the best type of zero knowledge validity proof. Um, but yeah, it's a little bit different. So, but for now, the biggest again is onboarding new devs and really kind of developing the language itself. And then there's the other challenge of the users, right? They're used to the products made with Solidity or made, in a regular kind of way, and that network effect of like, would they use something else? What is the use case? Why is it better? And how can we make them feel that? We know from a tech standpoint, it's great and it's futuristic, but what's the usability? And I think that's where we can even segue into like ecosystem projects and things like that.
Yeah, super interesting, and definitely makes sense. You're talking about how it's difficult to find developers that are familiar with Cairo, and adding the user perspective is also a super interesting point. So, I mean, when these products are written in Cairo, is the UX different? Is that what you're suggesting, or are you saying that like traditional Solidity or EVM compatible, let's say wallets like MetaMask, you just don't get those standard integrations that everybody's used to? Really, how does the UX differ when you're working with Cairo?
Yeah, I think you nailed it there, right? Like, wallet is definitely a UX thing, right? Like, if you already have MetaMask, then you're more inclined to use maybe a Bitcoin scaling solution that allows you to use MetaMask. Um, you know, versus if you have to download a new wallet, like what we've provided is we've actually created the Sky wallet with the Condor team, and they built the El Salvadorian wallet, Argentinian wallets. They built a lot of big projects, and they built a Sky wallet, which is the first smart Bitcoin wallet. It has assets, and it could show you all kinds of stuff. It could sweep. It could do all these like multi-call functions and stuff like that. Um, and yeah, it's just hard to have people download this new wallet, right? Like everyone has Xverse or whatever when they're logging in and messing with the BRC20s. Um, and I think that's a big part of it, right? It's like um, the user experience is a little different, but that's not it's not only that, right? Like the user experience is also, the design is different, so the user experience is like by design is like different. um, but I think it's better. I just think again, it's something that people are not used to. It'll take um, it'll take that one ecosystem project that really kind of nails down the abstraction of accounts and abstraction that's natively in Cairo, and nails down all these different like cool functionalities. And then um, at that point, I think people will be more inclined to look and say maybe there is something there.
Yeah, absolutely agreed with that one. I feel like that's often the case for adoption, is that one flagship product that makes onboards everybody, and then we kind of get used to it, and then start experimenting with other products and projects. Yeah, definitely makes sense. I found that a really interesting segment there. Thanks for the background on the pros and cons of using Cairo, and how you guys are developing different than other, let's say, L2s and rollups here. I want to switch it up a little bit and kind of like tackle the discussion of ordinals and BRC20s. I mean, it seems this is like arguably one of your more favorite or subjects that you're more interested in within the landscape. Correct me if that's incorrect, but It's super interesting because now we're getting into a time where, well, firstly, I'm excited about this part because there's a lot I want to tackle here. Firstly, you guys are really using ordinals in a way that I'm not familiar with anybody using before, right? For smart contract compatibility. Let's actually just start there. Like this is the case, right? If I'm not mistaken, I read this correctly. And how are you guys using ordinals, or simply is this these are simply inscriptions, and using the roll up, you're able to scale more so like the amount of data that can be stored in them, or the amount of applications that can be built on them. How are you guys looking at ordinals?
Yeah, so the cool thing about Bison is we're able to work with native Bitcoin assets like ordinals and runes in order to just kind of create some smart functionality within the L1 itself. So without leaving anywhere, without bridging, because think about it, if you bridge an ordinal that's denominated in sat ranges, it has to be synthesized on the other side. And at that point, it's not what it was in the first place. And so it doesn't really work when you try to bridge these native Bitcoin assets. Um, so I think the cool thing is what we're doing is we're essentially creating this execution environment where you can um, bring native Bitcoin assets and follow the Bitcoin consensus mechanism. However, we can do, you could settle your transaction way faster, right? If you're trading ordinals, like if you're trading JPEG, sometimes on Magic Eating, the transaction or the UTXOs are not available for a while, and maybe the floor jumps and dumps again, and you were trying to sell, but it's just transactions are in the air. And I think something like that is you know um, a pain point for traders, and is solved within an OS like what we have. You can do fast trading, high throughput trading at low fees. And I think the project Ordinal Hive right now is really doing a lot of cool stuff on the testnet. They have a lot of people on testnet, and they're kind of the blur of ordinals, and they're using the Bison OS. And to be fair, they tried to use other solutions, and there's just, again, it's just really tough to work with native Bitcoin assets. There's not that many sovereign roll-up designs that are um, uh, as far as we are, in the development process.
Right. Okay. Super cool to understand that better. And one thing that you referenced there that I think anybody who's passionate and has their eyes on the Bitcoin landscape right now is excited to learn more about, and hear your perspective on, is of course Rune's protocol. Glad that you kind of got ahead of the question in suggesting that you guys can support that. Let's talk about that. I'm still learning about this myself, so I would love to pick your brain on it. How is Rune's any different than ordinals or BRC20s? And you know from what I've seen, right, from the limited research I've been able to do so far on runes, I'm learning that it's intended to have more flexibility and functionality than BRC20 assets. Is this correct? And if this is the case, then I assume this is even better for Bison network, right? In that this might even create more types of opportunities for applications and easier building, perhaps. What is Runes? How is this going to add to the Bison network?
Yeah, I think runes are pretty cool. On a macro level, runes are parallel to ordinals, right? So they're not like built on ordinals, or they don't use anything from ordinals. They're just like a separate kind of extension to the Bitcoin node in programmability. And they're pretty cool because they're basically the fungible tokens, the official fungible tokens from the creator of ordinals, the non-fungible um, tokens basically on Bitcoin. And he created this protocol in order to mitigate a lot of different things that are wrong with BRC20s, in his opinion, or that are inefficient in any ways. And those are basically, UTXO management, right? Like every time you want to transfer BRC20s, um, you have to create a new inscription, a transfer inscription, and it's very costly, and it's also network and intensive, resource intensive. And there's a better way to trade these tokens, in Case's opinion, and that's if we create a fungible token specific protocol, and that's what runes are, right? They're essentially, the ability to create tokens and also trade them and kind of distribute them and do all kinds of things like that with them at much lower cost, because all they're doing is they're just updating little messages inside of UTXOs essentially. And the UTXO is just the unspent transaction output. Um, and yeah, that's basically a little bit about runes. And for us at Bison, what we liked already was Pipe, and Pipe was also a UTXO based protocol, right? And it's a little bit different, right? Because it's working with ORD also, but we really love the different meta protocols. The atomicals. We love BRC20s, obviously, CBRC20s. So many different like innovative protocols. And more recently, we were looking at some of the miners, right, and the mining meta there, and yeah, it's really I think unlocking the ability to create tokens in a way that like ERC20s did for Ethereum. You look at like what Ethereum did. I mean, just birthed so many projects because of that, and I think enabling communities and builders to create their tokens, maybe launch, maybe fund their projects. I think that's a great thing. So we support runes like 100%, and it's not, we support native Bitcoin assets, and so runes are native Bitcoin assets. We already support native Bitcoin assets like out of the box. So runes come around. We have a few projects that we're working with, like Runes Pro and Runescence. Runes Pro is runes trading and also inscribing or etching in this case. And then for Runescence is doing borrowing and lending against your runes, and pretty cool projects that are also working with Bison. Kicking off after the halving.
Super cool. I could imagine that there's going to be an explosion of innovation with, the release of runes. Just to stay on this for like one last quick question. I mean, do you still see a role for ordinals within the Bison network ecosystem after runes is released and creates more flexible and fungible tokens and mitigates some of the inefficiencies with BRC20s that you mentioned? Like, do ordinals have staying power? I mean, it's an interesting, and perhaps this is yet to be solved, right? That this question is yet to be answered, right? Because as you mentioned, it was the original creator of ordinals who's now developing the runes protocol to solve these inefficiencies. So yeah, how do you see this? Is there staying power of ordinals and BRC20s after runes come to play?
Man, I'll tell you, I think for ordinals, there's always staying power, right? Ordinals just kind of proved that collectibles are stronger than ever. People said NFTs were dead. No, they just resurrected even stronger in a different, better form. They're fully on chain, on the most decentralized, the fairest chain, the longest, most secure chain. And I think social signaling in general, right? You think about, having a puppet or something like that, versus having a $100,000 Patek watch. Like, how many people are going to see you wearing that watch, like over your whole lifespan? Let's just say 10,000. That's great. That's a lot of people actually that see you wearing this watch, and will get the social signal. But then, like, now you can have a puppet or something like that, say an OMB or something, right? And you'd have that as your PFP, and now how many people can see this social signal that you're putting out? Suddenly it's a lot more. You can have million impressions on one tweet in a day. So, a lot more people would be able to see that. So I think, NFTs, and ordinal NFTs in general are just not going anywhere. And runes are a completely different ball game because they're fungible tokens. They're more like the meme coins. Now, as far as BRC20s, now there's a little bit more of a shaky ground there. You know, I think projects that are building like real, um, real things with their BRC20s have a shot. I just think like meme BRC20s are gonna just have a very tough time because runes are specifically designed to be like the best meme coins on Bitcoin. And so I think, that's where, but like Ordi and Sats, I think always, have a place because how adopted they are. But I think it's just going to be tough for any other, kind of like meme or like non-utility, non kind of developed um, BRC20. And I could be wrong about that. I'm seeing initiatives from different people like Dr. Bodley and different dope builders in the space about BRC20 or BRC 2.0, right? And BRC 2.0, how it can add more functionality to existing BRC20s sounds really interesting. I really want to see what it's like and play around with that, with those concepts. But yeah, I think runes really, if nothing else, may threaten the meme BRC20 sector.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Like from my early research, I read that like this was actually created or invented to like create this meme playground on Bitcoin, the Runes protocol that is. And so I think that definitely seems, arguable and true that the meme ordinals, or at least like the new ones, will definitely have trouble. But like you said, it's kind of, we see as things evolve, it seems that always the OG collections, right? And I love the way that you kind of related ordinals to NFTs and runes to ERC20s. We see that, while NFT volumes have obviously decreased pretty significantly, the earliest collections are still super valuable, super high valued. And so I think that is the case with anything that has fundamentally changed the way that we or look at things, or has even fundamentally like added a new narrative or vertical within the crypto space. The OGs, anything that was some of the original way to get exposure to that new narrative, that new type of application, or new vertical, remains kind of highly valued, remains of interest for everybody. So I would agree with that. I think that's a great argument. I saw you took your mic off. If you wanted to add anything there before we jump over to the next one.
No, that's great. I think, yeah, I'm bullish on runes and projects that are doing runes, like the top tier ones, just because there's just a little bit more trust. But of course, some of the smaller projects could also run, and there's a little bit more risk there. But you know, like Runestone, I think has taken the world by storm. And I have some like Ethereum friends, a lot of them that know Runestone, but like they don't know like ordinals. They don't know many things about like Bitcoin, but they know like they're excited about Runestone, for example. I think that's mass adoption level hype is super good for Bitcoin and for the whole space. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that speaks for itself. That's super interesting. That people have heard of Runestone, but not ordinals. I mean, that's super interesting perspective, because the way I've seen it, I'm still discovering runes more and more, and like I still kind of thought it as this sort of underground thing where only people deep in the Bitcoin landscape are getting hold of it, and will be the early actors here. But I like that added perspective there. I'll defer to your experiences that some of your Ethereum friends and OGs there are already focused on this, and yeah, that does speak for itself about the potential for growth here, and the potential to onboard more people into like you said, Bitcoin and the Bitcoin ecosystem. That's definitely super interesting.
Yeah, I wanna say one more thing there. Like, just for perspective for everyone listening, it's $48.7 billion in TVL for Ethereum. So 48 billion, let's just say that, and it's about 160 million in TVL on Bitcoin right now. However, the Bitcoin market cap is much larger than Ethereum's, and that basically TVL on Bitcoin is only 0.02% of the market cap, and then the Ethereum TVL ratio to market cap is actually 23% of the market cap of Ethereum is locked in TVL. So 23% to 0.02%, I think, there is a massive opportunity for like just a huge liquidity unlock for Bitcoin when we um, essentially work more and develop more functionality for native Bitcoin assets on the native layer. There has been other scaling solutions. I mean, arguably, ETH is a scaling solution to Bitcoin, right? Stacks and things like that. And these chains are parallel to Bitcoin, meaning, they don't take any finality or anything like that on the settlement from Bitcoin. Therefore, the TVL on those chains is not counting as Bitcoin TVL, and it shouldn't, right? However, these chains kind of a lot of times pose as that they are actually Bitcoin, and they may just not be. They may just the next step over, but it's kind of what Ethereum is already. So I think, yeah, the whole game is, who can really work with what we have, the little bit of tech we have on the native Bitcoin layer to mess with native Bitcoin assets and provide just any more functionality than what we have. And I think the bar is pretty low, but also the tech is pretty tough. So
It's funny, and this was one of my closing questions, but I think it's so relevant now that I want to kind of bring it up now. It's like looking forward. Everybody has always joked and forecasted like the flippening. Is it possible that Ethereum's market cap flips Bitcoin's one day? But when we look at what's happening now in terms of building on Bitcoin, the ability for TVL or capital to be locked and allocated onto Bitcoin L1. Let's like flip the question. Is it possible, Rida, from your perspective, for the flippening to occur in that there's more TVL on the Bitcoin L1 than on ETH L1, right? Than on ETH mainnet. And right, so maybe this is a bit of a general high level question, but let's talk about and think about this with respect to the fact that, like you're saying, Bitcoin's market cap already is substantially larger. It is a more decentralized and the most decentralized, the most validated, the most regulated. I'm sorry, I should say the asset with the most regulatory clarity and direction and adoption from institutions, right? So when we talk about this and we look forward, like we could see, for example, Bitcoin being allocated as or utilized as collateral from large institutions, probably more likely than Ethereum being utilized as collateral from large institutions. And when we look at that with like a 5 or 10 year out perspective, like, do you think this is possible? How do you see this in terms of the flippening of TVL on Bitcoin versus Ethereum?
I mean, man, such a good question. I really have been like just thinking about this a lot. And I think, there are two things. There's one way where Ethereum's TVL would include a lot of stable coins, right? And then, however, stable coins can now also exist on the Bitcoin native layer um, within like a sovereign rollup per se. And I think Ethereum had a shot before like Casey came around, right? Um, and I think it had a bigger shot. It still has a shot, but it's a very, very much of a smaller shot. Now, depending on the success of runes of what it can do, as far as trading and what people are able to build around it and with it, I think that will be the deciding factor overall. Um, but here's the thing, like man, like I love trading on ETH. Like I was just on Base messing around with some meme coins, and I mean the functionality. Talk about Dan Kuhn update, and like Base is like cheaper than Solana, even faster, and it doesn't break, you know, and it's just been amazing. So I think there's a lot of functionality like that Ethereum has, right? And I think the future can also be, connecting, an EVM sovereign rollup execution environment directly with Ethereum, being able to kind of use it kind of like another rollup inside of MetaMask, right? Where you're essentially interacting with like layer zero per se, and you could bridge certain assets um, from the EVM on Bitcoin to the VM on Bitcoin to an EVM, right? And I think that's kind of like the more likely scenario where they kind of just feed into each other. But at that point, that Bitcoin has very smart functionality, and yeah, Ethereum is not going to catch up. Ethereum has another thing going for it, like it's being squeezed from all sides, right? Like you have networks like Say and Injective and Caspa and Solana and so many other ones like Sui and other ones, and they all have like this like L1 kind of scaling idea with, you know, kind of like doing certain things better than Ethereum, right? And like Bitcoin is doing security and decentralization better than Ethereum. And I think, yeah, Ethereum has one like last like, outlet for it. It's the institutions. It's, as they call it, the Fed chain or base chain, or like real world assets, RWAs, right? Like, you think about, trillions of dollars coming into ETH just for RWAs. Well, it's going to be pretty close to Bitcoin. And it's deflationary also. Like Ultrasound Money website, if you guys haven't been, like it's just eye opening. That, man, you see the supply of ETH literally going down. So I mean, ETH has some cool things going for it in the monetary side. The other side, the fundamentalist side of me says there is no second best, right? Like Michael Saylor voice, right? Because it's like, imagine if Bitcoin had like a pre-sale or like ICO like ETH did, right? Like imagine if it wasn't permissionless, and imagine if anyone could just plug in. Imagine if you needed 32 Bitcoin to run a node. Like imagine these things, and it's like, yeah, I see, So I would say ETH would not catch up to Bitcoin. The flipping will not happen anymore because of ordinals and rooms, and even just because of ordinals alone. But we'll have to wait and see. I'm curious to hear what you think about this one.
Oh man, I think you tackled it so well. I love how you didn't just focus on the pros of Bitcoin, but focused on the pros of Ethereum as well in tackling this question. Like, it's so true. I mean, I love trading on Ethereum, using ETH L2s. Like you said, I'm having a great time right now messing around in the Base ecosystem. Right?
Nice.
Like, I love. And I agree, the seeming direction of RWAs, real world assets right now, is on ETH. I could see an argument for that being, ultimately actually Bitcoin, where the majority of total value locked for RWAs is actually on Bitcoin. But yeah, to be honest, I really don't have a strong argument for either direction. I think that in terms of general market cap, perhaps I would make the suggestion or argument that I think there won't be a flippening. I think what we're seeing right now in terms of, again, regulatory clarity, the adoption of Bitcoin in the institutional realm and the macro world, and not just in the U.S., right, but really like governments across the world. It really caters to the argument that there won't be a flippening of Bitcoin's market cap. But like you said, then we think about, okay, well, what if regulatory clarity comes for Ethereum, right? What if there is an ETH ETF and then governments start to adopt this? And so in that case, maybe it is possible. I just pulled up the website you mentioned, Ultrasound Money. Super cool. I'm gonna look into this a little bit more, and it is cool. I didn't know that. Obviously, I knew that like Ethereum is arguably deflationary and intended to be so, but I'm not really familiar with the extent to which it is. I remember when there was this move to proof of stake, people were talking about the triple halvening or the triple halving for Ethereum, and how this was gonna have the effect of the Bitcoin halving times 3. I don't even know. I haven't seen any discussions of that since since the move to proof of stake. Rida, like, do you know what the status is with that? Has that supposed to have happened yet? Is that still a thing, or was that a fluke?
No, that was completely real. When it happened, it was the supply of ETH dropped by like negative like 90% or something like that, negative 95%, and yeah, it wasn't that long ago. It was probably like a year and a half ago. It was the merge, right? When the merge happened, and yeah, it went to proof of stake, and yeah, that's it's more of a recent change, right? And then before that, they started burning the gas. Like the gas fees would also get burned. Um, so there's a few different changes there that are happening. And monetary, I mean, it's interesting, interesting to see that ETH supply is just constantly going down, and the market hasn't reacted to the supply shock yet, right? Like prices didn't go where you would have thought they went from a triple halving. And I just think the supply shock hasn't hit yet. When people start seeing, there's, no more ETH on this exchange, and I don't think people have been around enough like to see that happen a few times. But from time to time, exchanges run out of crypto, guys. They just run out. Like they literally don't have any more. They will say we don't have any more to sell you. And so when that happens, I think people will see it. It's starting to happen now with Bitcoin, right? Because so many use cases now for Bitcoin, and like you're saying with RWAs coming to Bitcoin, I seen this AI project doing native Bitcoin execution stuff, from chat commands, kind of like a chat GBT bot. It's actually their own model that they cooked up from scratch. It's called XBTC bot AI, and I think that one is going to be really strong for rooms, things like that. Also, obviously, Bitcoin just demands more research, right? Like everything is a little bit harder on Bitcoin. It promotes that self-custody, or the pillar of Dior, do your own research. And I think that's a great thing. I think people running their own nodes, learning a lot more about that, and learning more about actual self-custody of your crypto, I think is very important. So yeah, man, there's definitely a lot going on there.
So much going on. And I just want to stop and say this has been such a great conversation. I wish we could go on like another 30, 45 minutes here, but I want to be respectful of your time and everybody in the audience, and that we're coming up on the hour here. I have two last questions. Maybe we can go over this one quickly, as it's not that significant, and then I want to dive back into one reflecting Bison Network again. But you mentioned putting on your Michael Saylor voice, and like I love it. And when we look at the early days of building on Bitcoin, I think there was a lot of, at least from what I saw, a lot of Bitcoin maximalists weren't happy with this direction. Didn't think that this was, like really the intended direction, the intended use case, originating from like the Bitcoin white paper for Bitcoin. And that, of course, it'll congest the network, causing transaction fees to spike, making Bitcoin less usable, less of a peer-to-peer form of transaction. Is this still the case? Obviously, you're well connected with the Bitcoin landscape, with the OGs. Has that narrative amongst them and amongst yourselves changed in terms of how people are looking at building on Bitcoin? Have they opened up to the idea of it a little bit more, or not so much?
Yeah, I think we're seeing an influx of people that are strictly looking to build on Bitcoin. Solidity devs that have been around since 2016, 2017, people that have been around that, maybe have been mining and lost some funds in Mount Gox, and I've seen a few people that came around that um, uh, the one of the people that's funding them is actually like the person that ran the very next node after Hal Finney, and they're coming back to build on Bitcoin because they heard that it's possible now. They heard that there are these different hacks we can get in the, we could get in the native Bitcoin assets and create ordinals and create protocols, right? Create all these different protocols, these meta protocols, super easily, and then add on, recursiveness. We didn't even talk about the recursive nature of inscriptions earlier. I kind of forgot that, but I think that's a very big advantage that Bitcoin NFTs and Bitcoin collectibles have over Ethereum collectibles, because they can call each other and use Bitcoin as a execution environment. Kind of how you have these HTML websites popping up all over or.io, and 3D assets being inscribed using recursive code. Yeah, this is it's really a lot of people are coming back now to Bitcoin, and I'm seeing also an influx from investors being very, very excited. We kind of have to like tame them and like pick and choose who you want to invest with us, but yeah, so there's a big influx in.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great to hear. I think I'm glad that has changed amongst the OGs and the maximalists. I think that like their buy-in is important for the direction of Bitcoin, and that it would be detrimental to see like this create some sort of like separation of interests within the Bitcoin ecosystem. I think things always do better and go further when there's buy-in from the early people and from people who have a lot of the liquidity within the ecosystem. So glad to hear that. Let's switch back to one last question about Bison Network before we wrap it up here. Diving into the ecosystem, the dApps themselves, we have a pretty full audience today. People have held on the call. I'm assuming they find this whole discussion to be very interesting. What are some of the standout dApps or ways for people to get involved in the Bison network? And also, like, let's give a shout out to the developers here who want to actually just take a little bit of their time to explore Cairo. I think you made a very strong argument for using Cairo and building on Bison Network. So I guess this is a twofold question. Stage is yours. For the audience who wants to be a user on Bison Network, what are the dApps? What should they do next? And then for those who want to be developers, what next steps can they take?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. For users, we have a few different flagship dApps that are coming out. One of them I already mentioned is Ordinal Hive. If you look at ordinalhive.io, if you look at Ordinal Hive on Twitter, I think they're doing the Ordinals marketplace very fast and super cheap, and you can settle your transactions almost immediately. So then you can actually buy a piece, floor goes up, you could sell the piece, things like that. And you can also do sweep functions, all kinds of stuff. The UI is really cool. It's a super good marketplace. We also have Orbit.io. If you look at Orbit, they do the on-chain credit scores with instant liquidity. Super innovative. So they're the first ones that I've seen that have taken your wallet data, right, on Bitcoin, and have created a credit score system with that. And they actually have created they've worked on the national credit system in India, and super good team. They also have an Ordinals launchpad that they've launched a lot of projects that also have sold out on their launchpad. And we also have brc20.com. BRC20.com is probably the most famous project that's on Bison. It's the OG of BRC20s. It's the very first website. I remember when BRC20s came out, and I was looking at the thread from Domo, and then I seen the BRC20.com, and I was like, oh, these like these new tokens that like Domo created while he was drunk are have market caps. Like, let me go and inscribe a bunch. And so now look at brc20.com. They have the .com token being traded everywhere. They have the super app chain. They have their own infra, and then we provided the AMM with them. Yeah, it's a very cool integration and partnership that we have. Also, so many other projects I'll probably miss. I apologize, but right off the top, I know there's a protocol called BRC333. You guys know Alano's. That protocol is heavily favored in our ecosystem, and we have different dApps that are coming out with the dynamic ordinals protocol, the BRC333. We also have Sky Wallet. Please download Sky Wallet. It's with a Z, zkywallet.com. And that one is, a smart Bitcoin wallet, first of a kind. It works for a lot of other rollups. So kind of how we have MetaMask, you can flip from different rollups like Manta to Arbitrum to ZK Sync. Well, we want to have something like that in Bitcoin. And Sky Wallet is that wallet, right? You can flip from the different rollup solutions. Right now, Bison is the only one that's ready. But as more come ready, then they'll be added in the Sky Wallet. But yeah, just without boring you guys, I think that'll be a good like top 5 that I can think of right off the top of the brain there.
That's awesome.
And no, yeah, that covers the ecosystem. But your second part of the question is for developers. For developers, if you just go to bisonlabs.io, go to our developers section. We're actually overhauling the website. You'll see the changes like real soon. If you're on there, if you've been on there already, you can also head over to Open Zeppelin's website and look at the Cairo Wizard there. The Cairo Wizard has a lot of different things in Cairo. Again, it's new that Open Zeppelin has added this functionality, and we've been actually working with the StarkNet community in order to provide more hands on Cairo and more quick starts for developers, hackathons, hacker houses. We did a hacker house at ETH Denver, and we're doing another one in Hong Kong for Bitcoin DevCon. So there's a few opportunities for developers there. You can always feel free to DM me if you're really interested or if you're really proficient in Cairo and you're looking to build something new and innovate on Bitcoin.
That's amazing. Yeah, thank you for all of those. By the way, everybody in the audience, this Spaces will be recorded. So if you want to go back and listen to that last part, make sure you got all those names down. Go ahead, please feel free to. Raida, this has been, I don't want to say my favorite Spaces so far to take away from the other ones, but this is definitely up there. I really appreciate you taking the hour out of your day to come share, your perspective, tell us everything that's happening, all the exciting things you're building over at Bison Labs and Bison Network, and really the high-level outlook on how things are evolving and where you see the space going. This was a super awesome space here, a great discussion. So I want to say thank you. Want to say thank you to everybody in the audience who, remained attentive throughout the discussion. Hope you guys did enjoy. Like Ryda said, the Bison Labs team is actually here listed as a listener. So feel free to go give them a follow. If you enjoyed the Bitcoin dialogues and want to see more of these, hopefully we can have Bison Labs back in the future as well. Give us a follow at the DIA community. Just the DIA page that's I'm speaking through right now, of course. And of course, Ryda, give Ryda a follow too. I haven't checked out your post, but I'm gonna follow you personally after this, Ryda, and hopefully we get the chance to connect at one of these conferences IRL. But until then, I just again want to say thank you so much. Maybe any last closing thoughts that you have for the audience?
No, thank you guys. Thank you, DIA, for opening up the discussion and allowing the platform. And we're so happy to conversate with you about DeFi on Bitcoin and all the new exciting possibilities. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Absolutely. Alrighty. Well, thanks everybody again, and have a great rest of your day. And we'll see you on the next episode of Bitcoin Dialogues. Until then.